And now we will open up our general government meeting, and we will have roll call again.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez? Absent. Councilmember Jaquez? Absent. Councilmember Reed?
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here. Thank you. Ryan, would you like to open the meeting?
Actually, I'll turn it over to Chief Schick to open the
Okay,
meeting.
thank you, Chief. Thank you for being here today. We've been looking forward to hearing your reports.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, members of council, good evening. Canyon City, good evening. This evening, Brandon Miller is here with us. He's the director of Southern Peaks Regional Treatment Center, and collectively, we are going to attempt to give you and the community an overview of certain aspects of operations, staffing, and some predictions for each respective agency. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Miller, and I'm going to let him talk and answer questions, and then I'll brief you on the PD.
Thank you for having me. My name is Brandon Miller. I'm the facility director at Southern Peaks Regional Regional Treatment Center. A little bit about myself before I get into Southern Peaks, those that don't know me. I've been the facility director for 7 years. My background is in clinical. I have a master's in counseling. I'm a licensed therapist, and I'm a doctoral candidate in psychology. Going through my dissertation process right now. So again, I've been there for 7 years. Some of you guys might know Southern Peaks intimately, some may not. Each year we have progressively I have changed the trajectory of where we're going with Southern Peaks, and I'll outline some of those things in the past that we've done, and then what the challenges that we faced in the pandemic era in 2020, and then where we're going to go in the future here. So. Southern Peaks is a 152-bed residential treatment facility, licensed residential treatment facility. We currently hold licenses in psychiatric residential, residential child care, and substance abuse. We have certifications and accreditations in Joint Commission, which is a national accreditation, as well as PREA certification, which is a federal recognition, as well as Sanctuary certification, which is a national trauma-informed care certification. We hold designations in mental health and substance abuse to do treatment for our facility. We also hold license in day treatment services, which is the community-based clinical services to perform clinical services. We have a fully accredited Colorado Department of Education school, and we serve males and females ages 10 to 18 at our facility. Prior to the pandemic, when I first took over in 2014 in June, we were averaging about 130 to 140 kids census-wise. At that point, and we were primarily dealing with the criminal justice population, from kids from Division of Youth Services as well as parole kids. We then made a trajectory change to move towards a mental health and trauma-informed care environment where we are serving, dependency, neglect youth who have, suffered some sort of trauma or dealing with mental health challenges at our facility. Along with that, began to expand and diversify our services from being primarily residential to moving into community-based services for kids, such as our day treatment program, which works with school districts, both Canyon. Right now, we work with Canyon and Pueblo West to serve kids that can't function in the school at this point, but don't need residential services. We began moving into more outpatient services as well before the pandemic, and started expanding into things like aftercare mental health services, substance abuse, as well as preventative care measures in those areas as well. I also shrunk the amount of units that we operated, going from 9 to 5 units during, I think that was in 2016. I did that to transition to a smaller, more intimate population based on our, the residential world and just the amount of staffing, the challenges that we dealt with, et cetera. Then moved, into and each year we have progressively done better with our incidents and our, performance at Southern Peaks, which then we moved into the pandemic where it was, we faced 4 distinct challenges this past year. One of those, the pandemic itself, which is the most significant challenges, which impacted us financially as well as, from a staffing, perspective, which I'm sure you guys have heard, over and over again from many organizations, which put financial strain on us, as well as, the operations, where we had to close down things like family visits, family passes, which has already put a stress on a high-risk population. And so these were significant challenges that we dealt with over the past year. As a result, I even decreased us more and put us down to 4 units of operations, slowing intakes, and at one point actually just stopping admissions for about 3 months just to make sure we got through the difficult parts of COVID at times, clusters. We did have several COVID outbreaks through mainly fourth quarter, which it would be October, November, December. Our contact tracing, put it back. We have a lot of spouses that work in the prisons that when the prison had the outbreak, one of the spouses got positive, which then ran through our facility. So we had to quarantine, several units of our facility. Through all that, though, the bright side is that we maintain safety. We continue to meet some of our goals with incidents as well as runaways, which are all 2 biggest objectives in an open residential treatment facility. And I have some stats here. From 2019 to 2020, we had a 38% decrease in physical managements and a 24% decrease in runaways, reaching below in 2020 below single digit less than 5 runaways attempts per month on average, which is the lowest we've ever had. Going in from 2020 to 2021, in our first quarter, projecting it out, we've had actually a 68% decrease in physical restraints, and we're at a pace to have a 70% decrease in runaways starting this year as well. And we've only, which is about less than 1 per month average runaway, which is the lowest we've ever been at Southern Peaks. We're currently, now that things are opening back up, we're currently looking at keeping our operations smaller, keeping at 4 to 5 units of operations, and looking at expanding our day treatment services and our community-based services again, where we left off before the pandemic, moving forward. The other distinct challenge that we dealt with, as I mentioned in 2020, was the child welfare reform system. Our system is reforming, moving to the Family First transition, which is changing up the dynamics of what's going on in child welfare and youth services. So, meeting those challenges challenges, along with the pandemic challenges, along with the financial challenges, is, our ultimate goal moving forward. What else? Again, like I said, we're focused on the substance abuse and mental health outpatient community-based services. So we're looking to expand. I'm looking to expand that this year as things open back up. So that's pretty much the overview for Southern Peaks right now. I'm gonna open it to questions if you guys have any questions.
Any questions from council? So we actually have 3 new council members here, and I don't know if you're aware of kind of the backstory of why we are having Southern Peaks come report to City Council, is because a couple of years ago, we were having several complaints from residents at 4 Mile about the runaways hiding at their homes or in their campers or at their garages, and thefts, and just feeling really unsafe. And so we decided to start some open communication on some solutions that could happen, because that is you are in a residential neighborhood. And so when you have runaways or walkouts, they are going straight into a residential neighborhood. And so we felt like there needed to be some accountability, and just make sure we're still in check as that neighborhood is continuing to grow and develop, that we would like to keep those numbers down. Ryan, go ahead.
Brandon, you mentioned 7 years ago that the census was between 130 and 140 kids. Where is that now?
So we're at a census at 45 right now. I'm hovering. Last year, before the pandemic, we were about between 55 and 60. So I've dropped it about a unit, from 5 units to 4 units during the pandemic.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
So when was the last time that we had somebody walk out or run away? Like, what was the most recent?
So we had one in January and one in March.
So can you explain to me, because I haven't been here before, like, how does that happen? Because I've driven by it a lot, and it looks scary. Like, I wouldn't climb the fence with, like, the barbed wire at the top. And so, like, how does that happen?
So in the state of Colorado, there's not an allowance for a secured residential treatment facility. They're all what's called staff secured residential, which means we are not allowed to lock doors or lock gates at a residential. So they can literally walk through it and just walk out if they choose
So
to.
walk out the front door as they wish.
The other component, and there's very, debates on this and arguments, but, the state of Colorado does not consider runaways a safety issue. So it prevents a staff secured facility like ours to manage the behaviors when a kid is walking out. So now, in response to what, and the mayor is correct, and some of the creative solutions that we have put into play, we do a contract directly with the police department that sits outside the facility, specific for runaways. So one, it doesn't take away. It's an additional resource for the police, so it's not taking away resource for the community, but it also, the police are allowed to detain that kid and bring that kid back at that moment. So, but that's how the state of Colorado, whether I agree with it or not, handles runaways across the state.
Okay, so now I'm extra confused. So can I have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I guess this is towards you, Chief Scheck. So we had an awesome retreat, and you kind of explained to us, like, how many people we have on patrol and those things. So when you're saying that someone's there as a resource, does that mean that we actually have, like, an officer on patrol physically there?
Despite the staffing challenges and the reduced enrollments, Mr. Miller has managed to maintain an overtime budget to pay an officer to go out and sit at the facility during peak hours of when they have those issues the most. And he said that's been quite a deterrent for him.
Okay, so it's not, when I'm thinking of these numbers that are rolling in my head from our conversation that we had that was really important not long ago, we're not taking an additional
No, ma'am.
body out of that part.
No,
Okay.
ma'am, we're not pulling somebody out of patrol
Okay.
faced with those huge numbers and depleting our resources. This is additional.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. So
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you for the clarification.
Yeah. And we found that solution to be mutually beneficial for, and I think it's a big part of why we're one of the best runaway statistics in the state for residential facilities, if not the best.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Well, Brandon, I want to first start off, thank you for all you do out there. I have knowledge of a family friend whose son ended up there, and he turned out to be once through, is an outstanding person now, and so I congratulate you on that. And I'm very aware, if times change in that, I'm, looking at your numbers, are you, so possibly in the future if things, let's hope not, got worse, can you expand back to get back to higher numbers there? Is that gonna, you ever looked at, or do you want to keep your numbers low?
Good question. All right, so I come from it I'm just being upfront and honest. I come from two perspectives here. I am the facility director in the business organization, but the reason I'm in this is because I'm a therapist and I want to help kids. And I believe the more it's important that we have the most intimate and when I say intimate, like the ability to reach individual kids with the resources that we have, and I don't believe the volume is the best way to go about that. Okay. However, that being said, the reality of organizations, businesses, and just the way the system is set up, you have to be able to, run an organization, pay for the staff, pay for the resources that we're going. I don't feel like that we are going to be in a position where we have to do that based on where the trajectory of the landscape of residential and child welfare, but it's not an impossibility depending on funding and depending on what's going on in the world and today and moving forward. So I don't want to preclude the opportunity, but I believe very much in the growth into community-based services, though I believe in residential very much, and I think that it needs to happen for particular kids. I do think the avenue for growth is to help the community and kids that are in the community and how to adjust back into the community. So I think that from an organizational standpoint, that's where it would go moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you. And like I said, I've met a lot of your staff, and you know why I've met a lot of your staff.
Yeah.
And all I can say is I believe you guys do a great job in a service that's very well needed. So
Well,
thank you.
I appreciate it.
In the past, we've had a sheet with statistics on it for the year, and I didn't see one of those, so I do have a couple of questions that I don't know if you have those numbers.
Okay.
But I did get an answer to the first one, and that is you have about 45 kids right now. And last year in 2020, you had about less than 5 runaways a month, which actually could equal up to 65 a year, which is a big number, even if that's one of the best in the state. But I would like to know how many times were the police called to Southern Peaks in 2020?
I don't have those numbers. We don't track, based on, at least on previous work with the police and chief, we don't track our statistics based on police contact. We based on incidents how we get regulated on the from licensing. So we define ours different definitions from what is a police contact versus not a police contact. So for example, if a kid walks out and a police officer is there, okay, and brings the kid back, that's not necessarily going to be considered a runaway from our statistical standpoint, okay? But that might be a police contact runaway for I don't know how they define that context.
So we have had instances where there were runaways and they were brought back by the police because they were caught in town stealing. Have you tracked that as
Have-
far as those types of runaway?
If they've done a crime in the community, yeah, if we are aware of the crime, yes, we do report, we do get that. But we're not always aware that a crime is committed.
How many do you have reported for 2020?
For 2020, I don't have those numbers with me right now. I can certainly,
In past
into that.
conversations, we also had conversations about, you have limits on what you can do about runaways. You just walk out the front door, and also limitations. I was under the impression on what you can do if a child lashes out on restraining, and so, which also has incidences of assaults. And so I'm curious, how many assaults were there among the minors, and how many assaults were inflicted on staff?
I don't have those numbers with me today. So, and then that would be, the difference between assault or aggressive action would be the interpretation that I would need to know, if you want those numbers in, which I can certainly get those.
I would appreciate that because
Okay.
it was pretty eye-opening, actually. To have those, and I remember one year, it seems like this is before your time, Chief Schick, wasn't there even a murder, someone was killed?
No, we've never had a death at the
Or
facility.
maybe hospitalized?
Yeah, we've had, that was in 2000, I think before I got it, was 2013, I believe it was, there.
Chief Schick, I know you haven't been here a long time, but you have had, obviously, building a relationship with Southern Peaks. Do you have anything that you would like to report from your perspective?
Well, I can say honestly, Madam Mayor, members of council, I have had a very short and a brief relationship with Mr. Miller, but he's been very welcoming. I had an opportunity to tour his entire facility, meet staff, and most recently, as you're well aware, we had a out-of-state citizen complaint from a family member, and he was very receptive and helpful in helping the police department settle that issue, and we were promptly able to resolve the matter and report back to the family.
Thank you, Chief. And probably one last question for me, and that is, one of the other tools that was implemented was the reverse 911 call, so the neighbors would become aware if there was a runaway. Is that something you're still implementing? And
Yes, we still do it,
okay.
yes.
And do you have the number of how many 911 reverse calls you placed in 2020?
The Nixle reports, no, but that would be associated with our runaway counts. So we do that for the runaway counts. So if we had, I think our total number in 2020 of it, runaways was 49 in 2020.
Okay.
So that would have been 49 times.
And yes, Ryan?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would just like a confirmation, were those reverse 911 calls made for those 49 runaways?
The assumption, I know I get them too. It's on my cell phone when those happen. So, but I would have to go out and pair each one. I can't say for 100% certainty that that it matches every single incident. But I don't even know if there's a way to track that. But we can look at it. I can try to look at it and see. Again, going forward, if that's something you guys are interested.
Well,
in
we are interested because it helps us recognize and be able to see in black and white numbers that
Okay.
that you are being really proactive and
Okay.
and helping to be a good community member in our 4 Mile area. Ryan Stevens, did you have something?
I was curious, and Brandon, I don't know if you know this, and Chief, you may have to look it up. What is the radius of that reverse 911 call?
I think it's an enrollment thing, so I don't know that there is a physical barrier radius. I think it's one of those things that if you request to enroll yourself into it, you'll get it through your cell phone. and you get a text that says you get it right away or whatever.
right. Thank
Now,
you.
what we can do, which I don't think we've done recently, is send out another, newsletter to get people to enroll if you like that to happen as well.
Probably a lot of new neighbors out there
Probably
that aren't
right.
even
And what you
aware.
were talking about, I was thinking it's probably a good time to probably do it again, but,
I think that would be appreciated by the neighborhood.
yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brandon, tell me a little bit about how the reverse 911 calls work from your perspective. Do you initiate that? I mean, do you dial a number and it goes out, or do you have to call someone that actually issues the reverse 911 call?
Yeah,
or
so
what?
there's a website that we have a contract with Nixle Reporting, and there is a website that we go in and type in. So we have to log in. We have to type in what the incident that happened and what it, what times and all the data, and then it'll shoot out to anyone that's enrolled. Their phones enrolled into that during that time.
And are you aware the Combined Regional Communications Center has also a reverse 911 ability to make calls? It might be a little bit different because those, I don't know that you can actually target those calls to specific runaways from Southern Peaks, but it might reach a wider audience. But that capability does exist, and if you are interested in finding out more, the person to talk to is Bill Dugan at CRCA, and that is a service that that is provided by tax dollars, so it is available for agencies, I think, such as yourself for
Okay.
use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking to improve what we can improve. I mean, some of these things were put in, like I said, we've been the director for 7 years, so some of these been, 7 years ago, 8 years, or 6 years ago. So, I'm sure there's, more advancements and better ways we can do things, cool.
If you're paying for a service, this might be a service that you could have use of without charge.
Okay,
And so that might
that would be
be
helpful.
something you'd be interested in.
Yeah.
So talk to Bill.
Thank you.
He's a good guy. He'd be glad to tell you what's available to you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
I just wanted to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. Is it residents? Is that what you refer to the
Youth or residents?
youth? I don't know if you're aware, but I have had 2 of your youth that were on a work-study program that had come into our business and helped us. We taught kind of them the trade that they maybe were interested in.
Yeah.
And nothing but compliments, very respectful young men that came day in, day out, brought their lunch. Obviously, we fed them better food than you guys supplied, but
I've tried to increase that too. I've tried to help
but we
that.
had a lot of fun with them. And as far as I know, they're both they're not with you anymore, and they have had a tremendous success outside your program. So, just wanted to share my experience with Southern Peaks, and I think you guys are doing a great job based on the 2 young men that were on our work study.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that very much, and like a lot of these industries, and you hear about the couple bad things that kind of outshine all the good work. I mean, and when even at our toughest times, which we'll have tough times again. I mean, they're difficult kids, they're challenging kids, but at any point you can walk out there on that campus and it looks like a normal college campus where you're just walking around with kids living in dorm rooms and going to school, and as Chief saw the other walking around, and then but there are moments that kids that these are high risk kids that variables and things, they're there for a reason, and they get they struggle and in moments, but those are the minority. The majority of kids are very successful and have done very good things leaving.
I have to say, I was a little nervous when they had first approached me, to take on some work-study youth, but they were super respectful to the public, and it was just a great experience for us, and I'm sure for them as well, just to be able to interact with the community and be able to learn a trade or something for their future.
And we have several kids, you know, even with the pandemic where we had to shut a lot of those programs down this past year. We're hoping to expand back on, you know, getting back into the community, getting more integrated volunteering. We did a lot of volunteer stuff in the past, and getting those things, you know, back up and running. But, you know, our school, we graduate, you know, 5, 6, 10 kids. We're a year. You know, they get full GEDs, full diplomas, pick up trades. We have transition vocational classes, you know, going on. A lot of kids doing a lot of good things out there. So.
Thank you, and I think that is a great note to end on, as the ultimate story is changing kids' lives for the
Yes.
better, and so we appreciate that, and your role in doing that too, for being a positive mentor. If that's all right, we're going to switch over to Chief Schick. That's all right?
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both for being here today.
Well, I am here to review for you some of the operations and staffing issues going on right now within Canyon City PD. I figured we would start just looking at statistics. I think it's important to recognize the hard work that the men and women of Canyon City Police Department do routinely. So looking at support document 1, we can see that, and we go through code enforcement stats, and you know, it is a very large number, 1,555 calls, 1,440 of those calls they were able to gain compliance, and the remainders were court fined or unfounded. What's remarkable about each of these departments, divisions within the department that we go through, each of them work at significant staffing shortages. We have had more than our fair share of struggles in keeping each department fully staffed. And you can look down the list here and see that we work, the code enforcement folks work everything from you know, uncut grass or kept yards, littering, inoperable vehicles, outside storage, junkyards, RVs. They run a gamut. We've red tagged or towed 204 vehicles, responded to 725 animal complaints, and wrote 77 parking citations. And that is, at least for the time that I have been here, they have been operating at 50 or 25% staffing. Most recently, because of some personnel issues that we had, Brenda Lloyd, one of our CSO workers, has been carrying the lion's share of everything all by herself. So just give a shout out to them, all of them, for doing a wonderful job. But Brenda and Kelly Duncan, they've carried the lion's share for the time that I've been here, the last 4 months. Of their total stats, they've had complaints, 597 complaints, and they've closed 587 of those complaints. And again, going back to those staffing shortages, that's a significant number. And then when you work in the fact that many of these things take multiple trips or multiple contacts with citizens, because we don't run right out and give people tickets. We try and keep it civil, and we try to encourage people to obey the law rather than enforcing the law. So these complaints will require multiple trips by CSO workers to go out and touch base with these folks and help encourage them to come into compliance before we start issuing notices of violation and summonses and court and that sort of thing. So they do a remarkable job. Moving into Our patrol component, again, typically working anywhere from 10 to 25%, 10 to 20% staffing shortages. CCPD patrol responded to 33,505 calls in 2020. A very remarkable number. Took nearly 4,000 reports, wrote over 1,000 citations, gave 518 warnings, and made nearly 1,000 arrests. Again, very remarkable numbers. And I am encouraged and just filled with pride as I go throughout the community meeting folks and talking to them about our community and about our police department. And I'm just utterly amazed with those staffing shortages, the level of work and commitment demonstrated by our police officers, our code enforcement officers, our detectives. Typically, when we see a combination of high call volumes and staffing shortages, what we see are, disgruntled employees and less than satisfied citizenry. And that's not the case here in Canyon, or at least that's not been my experience. I am not here to suggest or otherwise imply that we are without fault or without shame in certain instances. We can always be better. But I'm very proud of these men and women as they continue to work in this capacity. Moving on to the detectives, they worked, and this is 2 general assignment detectives, 78 cases. Doesn't sound like a real big number until you realize that these are felony cases. These are cases that take a considerable number of man hours and oftentimes can take upwards of months or years to close a case, depending on the evidentiary challenges in front of them. 22 of those cases remain active, 56 have been closed out, and we worked 46 narcotics cases. Again, doesn't sound like a huge number when you look at it and you say 365 days a year on the calendar. Well, those 46 felony narcotics cases took narcotics detectives a number of hours, days, weeks, months in some instances to build a case to resolve or result in a criminal charge. Those are very difficult cases to develop. It's very, as you might imagine, narcotics trafficking. There are pockets of distributors or dealers locally. They deal to a certain pocket of the community, and if you're not within that pocket, it's hard to build those cases. So we work collectively with cooperating witnesses, and we go about making those cases, and it's a very, very difficult task. Our co-responders, those are our law enforcement professional and clinician from Sylvista. They work together, and they go out and they help in instances of police matters dealing with mental health issues, which is a growing trend in our society. They responded to 250 calls last year in 2020, average of about 21 calls a month or 200 field contacts annually. They go out and they relieve our police resources. I'll give you an example. One recent case, we had an individual that was armed with a knife at Walmart and was experiencing some mental health issues. We initially had 3 or 4 units on scene there trying to control that. And that's a very challenging time for the person exhibiting the mental health issues, because when we put 3 or 4 police on them, it becomes an escalated situation just by virtue of the presence of that many officers. It's a relief to have folks like Corporal Snyder and Marcy come in from Sylvista and go in and be able to de-escalate that situation. And in that very call, we were able to relieve 50% of our resources on scene immediately with the presence of Corporal Snyder and Marcy. So we're real proud of them and hopeful that we can continue to expand that program, because those calls continue to rise for us annually. The park ranger, he does a wonderful job each and every year. He responded to 510 calls last year, and he is a big component in working with the homeless in the community and helping them in terms of the things that they need, and helping them when we need to relocate them because they've established camps, unsanctioned camps in areas that the city and the community would rather not have. He is a wonderful resource for us. Any questions on any of the stats? I ran through a lot of numbers, and I know we went through these things recently in the retreat, and we wanted to put that forward out to the community. Before I move on, is there anything with regards to the numbers?
Well, Chief, I'd just like to say, make sure that you take the message back, at least from my perspective, and I'm sure the other council members feel the same way. Our thanks to the men and women of our police department.
Yes, sir.
Because we do appreciate what they do. And I do just have one comment, that our co-responder program, luckily we have a grant for that.
Yes.
And unlike many communities, the direction that they're headed in across this nation, where they are doing co-responders instead of policing, we are doing co-responders in addition to policing, and I think that makes all the difference.
I couldn't agree more. And we're seeing those jurisdictions that are sending sending clinicians in emergency response where without police support, and that's a challenge in of itself. I think we owe it to those folks going out into these situations to at least have a level of insulation for them should things go wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Any
well,
other questions from council at this moment? Okay, let's move.
Okay, moving right along, just talking about those staffing levels. Right now, at CCPD, we're going through a transitional period. We were able to bring in a third police commander and establish some clearer lines of accountability and establish a little more continuity in terms of direct reporting. And when I say direct reporting, I'm talking about the line level personnel knowing exactly who's responsible for what and who to ask certain questions. We had some gaps previously under the two commander tier, and I'm happy to report since the retreat when council gave us the opportunity to maneuver that way, I've heard nothing but positive comments. And I know that our staff is rallying quickly and trying to come to terms with the new path and new directions. We're identifying our individual paths or collective paths each and every day with each and every staff meeting we have. And I suspect it won't be too long before we really start moving this ball down the field. So I'm happy to report that. Promotions, when we talk about those commanders' spots, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Tim Bell and Tim Walsh, who were both recently promoted to commanders. And they complete my command staff, and they are absolutely essential at this stage of the game for us to kind of reorganize and restructure things to move forward. As a result of those promotions, of course, then that trickles down towards the line level that we had other promotions. So Chase Leonard, who was a patrol sergeant, is now going to take over as the sergeant of detectives. We're real happy about that. And Nick Mall and John Dickens were both promoted to patrol sergeants, so we're real happy about that. We've got some strong sergeants there. We had a vigorous assessment center, competing patrolmen looking for that promotional opportunity, and both Nick Mall and Mr. Dickens did well and were appointed accordingly. Currently, we have 5 vacancies in our patrol staffing numbers, although we have 2 in the queue. So we are still short 3. And because of the realignments, we'll have 1 more detective spot to fill here because Sergeant Mall came out of narcotics and he was a detective there. So we have that 1 vacancy in the detectives and one vacancy presently in code enforcement. And of course, we talked about the staffing challenges there. Looking at those staffing challenges, I had an opportunity when I spoke with you at the retreat to talk about the possible benefits of building our relationship with the military, looking at veterans coming out of service to try and recruit towards Canyon City. And we have learned through Mrs. Nordyke in finance, who was at the city council retreat when she heard me talking about veterans, was able to link me to a contact that she had, and we are now exploring opportunities to become a host agency for a veterans group that will essentially farm veterans out to us. If they can identify veterans that are interested in law enforcement, farm them out to host agencies, which we're looking to become one. And that gives them an opportunity while they're still in the military to come out and experience Canyon City, experience our police department, give us an opportunity to get to know them and for them to get to know us, and hopefully establish some relationship and hopefully recruit some fine veterans to come in and join our department. Outside of that, we're looking at other recruiting possibilities, advertising in different venues and things like that. But our big push right now is the military recruiting, and we're going to move forward on that pretty quickly. We are also, of course, we're anticipating the city pay study, which is essential to closing some of those gaps. We're entertaining anything and everything. We're looking at vacancy savings so that maybe we can recruit some folks who perhaps don't have the money to pay for their law enforcement certification up front, but they're quality people, and we can use some of the vacancy savings that we have presently to cover the cost of their tuition to go and get their law enforcement certification. Of course, continuing the sponsorship programs, which is very similar to utilizing vacancy savings. We talked about the veteran fellowships and the military-based recruiting. So we are, as I said, we're exploring every opportunity in terms of recruiting. I even thought recently about trying to develop some sort of payback or reward system for our own people finding recruits that they make referrals on that maybe are successful down the road. Any questions on staffing or our recruitment efforts? Or
Councilmember Reed.
So I have a few things. First of all, I have not seen you since all of the craziness that happened when I was away with the shooting and all of that stuff, and that was really scary. And I was thinking about all of you guys and praying for your guys' safety, and so I'm so thankful that all of you guys are okay. I'm heartbroken for the family that was impacted, but please just relay that to everybody that was involved, that they're cared for and that we appreciate them, and that we recognize that events of that magnitude don't just disappear when the newspaper headlines do. So that we are still here continuing to support, and if there is any support or additional things that are needed that any of us can help with, that we're here. So I just wanted to say that first, so thank you so much. I have a question just to kind of understand kind of behind the scenes how the morale of the department has changed. You mentioned with these promotions and other officers applying for them, Was there excitement about these promotions? I mean, was there a lot more interest in applying for them, or are we still seeing some gun shy kind of, I'm not sure if I want to be promoted yet until we figure out this new leadership? Like, kind of, can you explain that to me a little bit, how that's going on?
Well, yes, ma'am. Absolutely, Ms. Reed, and thank you for that. It was a very challenging event, and it's not something that happens, thank God, routinely around here. I can tell you that everybody involved and will greatly appreciate your words of support and encouragement. That was a very challenging event. It touched several of our officers that were directly impacted, and we rallied support around them immediately. We're continuing to carry that posture in terms of peer support. It's scary when those things happen. So we are thankful to hear, and I think I'm fairly confident that everybody there realizes the care and compassion expressed and carried forth from this board, from the council, and I will indeed pass that along again. But I am fairly confident, having had the number of conversations that I've had with rank and file supervisors and command staff, I think they understand that you guys have their back, and they appreciate that. Getting back to the promotional opportunities and the interest that we experienced during that time, I think the numbers were pretty fair and generous. We had, I believe, 5 people interested in the commander's position. 5 people, I think 5, was it 5? I believe it was 5.
For commander, I believe so.
Yeah, 6 that were interested, only 5 met the minimum qualifications to actually assess. And regretfully, we only had 3 for the 2 patrol sergeants, but that was because we were experiencing our Achilles heel. We only had 3 that were qualified to test for the sergeant's opening because it requires a certain number of years of law enforcement experience. And our numbers are, our experience numbers are shallow at this point. We have a very young agency. Some might look at that as the glass is half empty. I look at it as the glass is half full, because we have an opportunity to teach them and mentor them to come up and be the law enforcement professionals that we all hope that we are. So I look forward to that. But in terms of the overall participation, I think we had a good return, considering we only had a few for the sergeant's position that were eligible. So I suspect those numbers are going to continue to blossom as our experience levels increase.
Well, it's good to hear that those that could apply were excited and that they did. So to me, that's really an encouraging thing.
It was reassuring for me. Absolutely.
I'm sure it was as
Yes,
a leader
ma'am.
to know that
It was
they're
very
like,
reassuring
hey, these
for
guys
me.
want to lead with me.
Yeah, it would have left a different breeze in my sail if nobody had applied.
Right.
Well, and I will say, Chief Schick, that during that process, as it came through, and we had some internal, promotions, which were really pleasing, that in the interview process, we talked about how young our
Yes, ma'am.
our police department is. And like you said, that's kind of our Achilles heel, that we have a lot of inexperienced officers. And your reaction to that is, that's why I'm here. I teach
Yes.
law enforcement.
Yes.
I love that part of my job, and I'm here to groom and to grow your leadership, to take my place when I'm done.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're doing it.
I am trying, absolutely, and I will work tirelessly to make it happen. I had a good meeting with our new sergeant today and shared those very thoughts and sentiments. And I just want them to recognize that although you're promoted, it doesn't mean your job's getting easier. It means it's getting harder. our service volume just changed. Not only are we serving the community, now we're serving everybody who works with you on that team. So, but we've got some really good sergeants and some great commanders, and I am optimistic about our future.
Councilmember Smith.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to echo some of the sentiments from Councilmember Reed with support, as well as share with you some communications that I had with public during the shooting situation at how professional all the law enforcement staff were, and that they not only didn't feel as scared, but felt safer knowing that CCPD was there, and they were courteous, and they were professional, and they handled the situation above and beyond. So kudos to the department for the public recognizing that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith, and you're absolutely right, and I couldn't be prouder. And we received an email from a on-scene witness who witnessed that event unfold on scene, and you know, that's a testament to the professionalism, the training, the restraint. You get involved, and I've been in more critical incidents than I care to count, but it's hard not to become emotional. And that's unfortunately when we see things go awry in law enforcement. And despite the direct threats and challenges displayed that day, our folks handled themselves very professionally and tempered their response and handled the situation very well.
I'm afraid we're wrapping up on time. We have another meeting at 6. I do have one quick question, Ryan. When do we expect the pay study to be wrapped up so we can start making some actions with it?
Yeah, so the pay study, we just defined the market this week. So that work will be ongoing for April and May. I imagine we'll have it wrapped up hopefully mid-June.
Okay. We'll be definitely anxious to see the results of those. For council members' benefit, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick and I happened to learn from Sheriff Cooper. He joined us on the radio kind of spontaneously this morning and had talked about how this particular person from Denver that came and did the shooting of the victim, and it was really scary for officers and all of that, that he had been stopped because of breaking into cars, which is a felony. But because of the COVID rules at the county jail, they could not take him in. And since this incident, Chief Schick and Sheriff Cooper have sat down together and talked about it, and they are now taking in felon arrests.
Yes.
And so that is some good news. And an additional kudos to you for building a bridge with our Sheriff's Department as well.
We just met yesterday. Now every other month, all the 11th district, the chiefs and sheriffs get together. And we met yesterday, and we talked about that very issue, and I've spoke with Mr. Stevens about it. We're going to put forth a letter on behalf of the 11th jurisdictional chiefs and sheriffs in opposition of a very law that is the jail depopulation tool, 21062, which looks to carry those COVID reliefs into law, which would, again, prevent us from making an arrest in a situation such as that. So
Right.
We are collectively working towards that end right now.
Thank
And
you, Chief.
I've also been in touch with Senator Heisey up at the Colorado Legislature to let him know that Chief and I would be happy to come up and testify in regards to the incident that happened here and why this legislation is such bad legislation.
Thank
Agreed.
you to you both. And just final comments on behalf of all of council, we do appreciate our CCPD so
Oh,
much.
thank you,
We are
Madam
behind
Mayor.
them. We want to do what we can to get you fully staffed. And so many accolades for the big things that have happened, but also accolades for the small things as our police officers bring about justice to our community. And every chance that we have to publicly give those congratulations face-to-face to our officers, we welcome that when it's
And-
appropriate to do so.
I'm unfortunately going to go to Highland Ranch the next 2 weeks. I have to get my post certification, but as soon as I get back, we're going to pay recognition to those officers in that event.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you for your time and your service, and this
Yes,
meeting
ma'am.
is adjourned.
Thank you.